Hi everyone, thanks for joining today's webinar. I know for some of you it's good morning and for some of you it's good afternoon, but thanks everyone for joining. We're really excited to be speaking to everyone today. Just before we get started, I wanted to do just a couple of introductions so you know who you're kind of hearing from. My name's Tom Platt. I kind of head up product sales here at Intechnica, and I've done so for quite some time now. I work really closely with some of our clients in the ticket industry to help them improve their on sales and really try and make things as fair as possible. We're really fortunate today to be joined by Andy Still. Andy Still is our CTO and one of the co-founders in our business, and Andy's got a wealth of ticketing experience, having worked with companies like Gigantic and C-Tickets over the past 10 years. And finally, I'd like to welcome as well Rodri Morgan. Rodri is a really sort of keen customer of ours, and Rodri does a lot of work at Roundhouse about making their on sales as fair as possible. I was talking to Rodri only the other day about how he's really trying to improve the fairness of their on sales. So just in terms of some quick introductions, that's who we're going to be talking to you today. I just wanted to also just let you know, so why is it of interest to us? I think it's really useful to just put this in perspective to understand where we're coming at this from. We were very fortunate to launch a product into the market 3 years ago called Traffic Defender, and at the stage that was Traffic Defender Visitor Management, which quickly became one of the industry leading website queuing solutions. So over the past 3 years, we've been working with a lot of brands across the globe, helping them improve some of the world's biggest on sales, helping them to protect their sites. And we've been really fortunate to sell that product into numerous businesses, deal with on sales day in, day out, and also get a real load of visibility into people's traffic, not just in the ticketing sector, but also in sort of digital media, publishing, e-commerce, travel, and various other different sectors. So we've got a really sort of breadth of visibility into traffic and what people are seeing. And what we started to find was that there was a real sort of rise of what we call non-human traffic. So what we're finding is everyone's site, anywhere between 20 and 50% of their traffic is non-human. So we have a product, Bot Control, which helps to give people visibility into this. So that's where we're coming at this from. I don't want to make it too much of a product pitch, but you know, that's why we have this kind of visibility. In terms of what we're gonna really cover today, first of all, just a bit of a background into what's going on, what we're seeing in the ticketing space at the moment, what we're seeing about touts. We're also going to discuss as well the industry, what action is it taking. Before we look at a bit more in depth into sort of non-human traffic and bots, what are they doing? What's the technology that's being used? Before finally going into sort of solutions that are out there in the marketplace, we're going to touch on a very high level sort of point about some of the non-technical measures that people can implement to try and reduce ticket touting, along with Andy Still and going into a bit more depth about some of the technical measures that can be put in place to reduce the various sort of nefarious things that are going on in the industry at the moment. And finally, we're going to end on a Q&A. So we're going to have Rodri from Roundhouse talking a little bit about what he does to prevent bots and bot traffic and try and make his on sales fairer, as well as also just answer any questions you may have. So if anyone does have any questions throughout this, you know, there's quite a lot of people on this webinar, so please feel free to submit your questions as we go. You know, we look forward to answering them at the end of the webinar. To get started, while we're all here today, I think, you know, it's pretty clear and evident to, you know, everyone that's on this webinar that ticket touting, secondary ticket sales are a real issue within the industry. You know, just in terms of numbers, you know, this was Sports Marketing Quarterly estimated that secondary ticket sales was a $15 billion industry in the US alone. We've also had, you know, IQ magazine state that, you know, in the UK we're looking at about a £1 billion industry here. Very recently we had the Waterstone report published where they were mentioning on average, you know, here in the UK we're seeing somewhere, you know, between only 20 to 40% of actual tickets reach the sort of primary ticketing market and get to fans first of all. And also a lot of, you know, consensus within the industry that there's a lot happening behind the scenes to, you know, sort of circumvent the traditional ticket sales channels, and people doing various nefarious things, deals going on with people pushing tickets to secondary platforms. So a lot of stuff going on. Not only is that a big problem in the industry, not only is that a big problem in the industry, but also, this isn't just a little thing. It's moved far beyond a lot of small businesses, small people, one-man bands sort of taking control of what's going on. We're now seeing sort of real businesses being spawned off the back of ticketing. Here in the UK, Live Nation stated that 70% of secondary sites, was 70% of all tickets sold on their secondary ticketing platforms were sold by ticket touts. We've got people like the Newman Corporation here in the UK, which is a 25-year-old who now has a net worth of £2.3 million, which is built up through selling tickets. And there was a recent article published in The Guardian, I think this week, where they were showing that Tickets to Go, an actual listed company, had 96 tickets for Take That's upcoming tour on resale on Get Me In, and they valued these at £59,000. But the face value for those tickets was only £6,000. So it's a really big problem, certainly, for the industry. It's certainly one that spawned a whole subsector with a lot of big players with a lot of money and a lot of interest in touting. And this is something we see in the press coverage. It doesn't take much research to find a lot of sort of headlines of people sort of really sort of angry about what's going on at the moment in the industry. These are headlines that cover not just, we've got sporting events here, we've got football, tennis, rugby, horse racing, and there's also a lot of headlines about sort of the arts, theatres, and various different shows that are going on. It's pretty widespread. Pretty much every industry we're seeing a lot of press coverage about what's going on. And the general sort of body of all of the press coverage is sort of aiming at a real frustration at, I would say, three things. The first, that people are frustrated how quickly things are selling out and almost feeling like they aren't getting a chance. The second is people are feeling frustrated that quite often tickets are coming up and appearing on secondary ticketing sites before they've even had a chance to buy them off the primary ticketing sites. And the third and final thing is just the sheer cost that some of these tickets are going for in terms of on the resale sites. We're seeing the other day in an inquiry, StubHub charging £500 booking fee on top of the £700 ticket fee. Here you can see that, Rugby World Cup final tickets were exchanging hands for over £100,000. So it's a really big money business, and it's certainly, well covered in the press at the moment in loads of different countries and loads of different sectors. And this is, obviously having a real impact on fans. It's very easy to find on social media a lot of fans tweeting artists and tweeting venues about their frustration, all with that similar sort of frustration of not being able to purchase tickets, seeing tickets on secondary ticketing sites, and just seeing the extreme cost that they're going for. So it's certainly something that, not only is the press picking up on and have been talking about for years, but also we're seeing, with social media rising, fans really venting this on things like Twitter and Facebook. But, that was very negative. I think it's great to see so many people on the webinar really showing that people actually want to do something about this. I'd like to think that everyone's joined because, alongside us, we're trying to, hopefully make the experience much fairer. So, what's going on in the industry? We're certainly seeing a lot of artists take a strong standpoint against ticketing. We've seen Iron Maiden really enforce digital ticketing and remove move to paperless ticketing to try and reduce it there, and they've had some real success. We've seen the people from Hamilton, the musical, driving legislation over in the US, and also a whole raft of artists, Adele, Ed Sheeran, Bruce Springsteen, Miley Cyrus, Al Doyle, all really publicly speak out against ticket touting and their frustrations, and we're starting to see that drive some changes in the industry, which is great. Not only that, there's a lot of countries that are actually starting to take action. I think the whole legal angle is really interesting. What we've done here is we've plotted a map of, in red, the areas that aren't actually doing anything about this. Green are the regions where they have already started to implement and put in rules against digital ticketing, and yellow the places that are currently in discussions about this. Obviously we've seen the Better Online Ticket Sales Act brought out and pushed through by Obama in the States off the back of what Hamilton did in New York. We've also had what the press have deemed Ticketgate here in the UK, where the House of Commons have been reviewing what's been going on with a full review, and also the Waterstone report. So a lot of stuff happening here, and similar progress being made in countries like Italy, Australia, and Canada. And let's not forget, there are also a lot of countries that had already had laws in place. So, there's also strong anti-ticketing laws in France, Sweden, Norway, and Israel. So, a lot of action going on from a legal standpoint in various different regions. I think it's important just to touch on that in a little bit more depth. I think despite the rise in legal actions, what we're not seeing yet, and what we would hope to see soon, is people really starting to be penalised, people being brought and held to account, and substantial fines for the ticketing touts, and people actually starting to take legal action against them. I think is one thing we'd be looking to see in the future. If the laws that are being passed are actually going to be of any use. Also, I think there's a law there in that ticketing platforms need to make it difficult for the touts to buy the tickets. If it's very easy for them to do so, then in effect what we're seeing is a lot of ticket touts not actually breaking laws, whereas we need very strict T's and C's that it's very clear that ticketing touts are in violation and can be tracked, so that we can then start to actually take legal action. I think what's going to be interesting as we see this boil out is, what are ticketing vendors, events venues, platforms, be it secondary or primary, expect to do to stop this. I think it's going to be really interesting to see if we're going to need to be held to account, if there's any, people are going to be audited on what's gone on, and how that whole process is going to work. So a lot of change happening in that space. It's too early to kind of make comment on how that's going to play out. I think the one thing we would come out from our perspective on this is that no matter what happens, I think given the mass of red in this map, I think it is still going to be fairly easy for ticket touts to move their businesses and the locations of their business outside of reach of the various jurisdictions of the laws that the tickets are being sold in. So there is still a real risk that even if we are passing laws in the likes of Canada and the US, that ticket touts can quite easily move their businesses across the border to Mexico, maybe Brazil, and start to run their organizations from there and still have the same kind of impact. So we see the legal stuff as a great thing that's happening, but certainly not just the single solution. I think what is also great about what's going on in the ticket industry at the moment is not just the fact that the tout industry has spawned a whole industry, but the fact that there's a whole industry being spawned to combat this. So we're seeing a real rise in organisations such as the Star Network here in the UK. We've also got the Fanfare Alliance, all dedicated to try and make the industry much fairer and try and improve the ticketing purchasing process for people, which is great. And we're also seeing a real rise of platforms which are specifically designed, so primary and secondary ticketing platforms. Primary ones designed to be really ethical in the way they release tickets, to ensure that they give those tickets to the fans, and also secondary tickets to ensure that actually, fans can resell tickets if they can't make it to a show, and they can do that, but without a high markup. So we're seeing a real rise in the industry for options for venues and ticket sellers to put their tickets through to try and improve the fairness, which is great. So a lot of changes and a lot of movement going on in that sector. I think now I just want to take a look and move on to actual, we've talked a lot about what's going on in the industry, but what is the actual impact of that? What's actually happening? So effectively, as I mentioned, we're really lucky in that we sit in this unique spot where we see a lot of people's web traffic from a lot of different industries in a lot of different countries. And I think, we spotted very early on, not just in the ticketing sector, that people's traffic was made up of a range of non-human, human traffic, and that non-human traffic itself is actually very, very complex. A real danger for any business, be it in the ticketing sector or any other, would be to just say that non-human traffic is bad and bots are bad and we want to stop them all. Quite the opposite. I think what we'd say here, having worked with a number of businesses over the past few years now, is that some of the non-human traffic is the most important visits your sites are ever going to get. So things like Bing, Googlebot, marketing, press, all sorts of different site scraping is absolutely great for your website. It's the stuff that's going to get your site indexed. It's the stuff that's going to get your site up there. And also, potentially, partners as well, third-party scrapers reselling your stuff, driving sales to your website. There's a real range of good non-human traffic out there. Similarly, a lot of that good traffic can often be misleading. So we do quite often see nefarious traffic masquerading as Googlebot. We do see a lot of crawling happening that you would want, but then also some of that crawling is people's rivals. So there's a real kind of ambiguity there to that range of traffic. And then to the other side, there's obviously the real risky traffic, where we're seeing hackers looking for vulnerability scans, trying to breach your databases, and in ticketing specifically, spinning bots where people are claiming tickets, putting them on a secondary resale site, holding them until they're able to sell them on the secondary resale site. We're seeing scrapers just scraping the content and advertise people's sales, drive traffic to the site. We're seeing snipers watching people's traffic and waiting for tickets to be reduced and then buying them up in bulk and reselling them. And obviously the obvious sort of touting, scalping bots, which are just there to buy up tickets quickly before anyone else gets a chance. So all sorts of stuff going on there in that space, non-human traffic. And I think it's really important that people take a view of, getting an understanding of what's going on, what's good, what's bad, and what for their business do they want to allow and what don't they. Just to put it in perspective, we talked a lot about bots. I think to bring it back to focus purely on ticketing now, there's a lot of sites out there. It's very easy for these touts to start to do things, to start to get tickets from your websites. A very quick search of the internet brings up things like ticketbots.net, where, anyone can go on and for a couple of $1,000 purchase bots specifically for events. We're seeing ones for Rio 2016, UEFA there. Or also bots for just specific platforms, Ticketmaster, C-Tickets, AXS there, where these bots are specifically designed. You can see they're spinner bots to try and get tickets from these sites in an unfair manner. So, a lot of easy access for people to really get into this industry with not too much money required, hence why I think it's such a hot topic and one that's really sort of growing at the moment. It's very easy for people to make a lot of money very quickly, and the barriers to entry are pretty small. Effectively it is an arms race. These people are making a lot of money and doing a lot to try and bypass your sites. I think what was interesting as well when we did look at ticketbots.net was we weren't just seeing software that allowed people to purchase tickets in an automated fashion. Some of these people are buying so many tickets, there's actually pieces of software out there to help them manage the libraries and the quantities of tickets they have, where they have them on resale and the profits that they're making because they have so many of them. And there's also software out there that helps people, manually edit tickets to make sure that, if you are doing PDF event tickets, they can then go in and change the names to whoever they sell those tickets to. So a real raft of stuff out there aimed at sort of coming up against the industry, and it's very easy for people to get into. I'm now going to sort of hand over to Andy Still, our CTO, who's going to talk in a little bit more detail about, what we're actually seeing in this space and a little bit more technically about bots and what's going on.
Hi, thanks, Tom. So yes, I think we'll just to pick up on some of the things that Tom's sort of talked about in a little bit more detail around some of the types and the nature of the non-human traffic that you may see through your system. I think one thing that Tom did mention briefly, which is really, really, really important to get across, is that there's a wide variety of different types of non-human traffic, which go from the very bad to the very, very good. And it's often quite simplistically put out there that it's all good bots or bad bots. But in reality, there are some good bots and there are some bad bots. But there's also a lot of stuff that's in the middle, which may be good or may be bad, depending on your needs or your requirements. So obvious good bots will be your search engine, spiders, and your monitoring tools. You definitely wouldn't want to do anything to that traffic. And at the other end of the spectrum, you'd have hackers and content theft and ad fraud, which you would absolutely want to do something about. But in the middle, you get things like price scraping and content harvesting, which are non-human traffic, which is doing something that is not illegal or necessarily bad, but you need to understand what it's doing and why it's doing it, and then evaluate the impact of that on your business. So I think it was worth at this point also just having a little bit of more information about the actual non-human traffic itself. I mean, we've said that it carries out a range of different activities which are good and bad, but it's also really important to remember that whilst it's non-human traffic, it all has a degree of human interaction, but the level of human interaction will be determined by how targeted an attack is being carried out. So at the sort of the left end of this spectrum, which requires a high amount of human input, we get the likes of Amazon Echo and devices such as that, which are effectively very targeted but non-human traffic. They'll all be targeted with carrying out just a specific action. And that is not something that is very unlikely that you'd want to block, but it will be different from your standard human traffic that you would see. At the other end, you'll be very wide-ranging automated scans that will just scour the internet looking for vulnerabilities within systems. There'll be very limited human interaction within those, and they'll just be out there looking for vulnerabilities that they know, and then they'll pass them out to people to take advantage of those vulnerabilities. But in the middle of those, there's quite a range. For example, for a known event, there'll be proactive human involvement to specify and target that particular event, monitoring and acting on the results of that non-human activity. So whilst it is all non-human traffic, there will be quite a large amount of human interaction on that specific event. There will also then be ongoing just scouring of sites, looking for promotions or tickets with limited availability, or just tickets that meet certain criteria that they may be interested in purchasing. There'll be then, again, a lot less direct human intervention in that, so the traffic will be a lot more repeated, but it will still be targeted on specific areas of interest to those people within your systems. Then, again, moving more to the right on the spectrum, there'll be scrapers there, which will have a lot less human intervention. They'll be carrying out regular, repeated scans and content processing. So as we're saying, just a range of different human input, and it's worth remembering that when we talk about non-human traffic, particularly around the ticketing area, is that some of this non-human traffic is very targeted, and there'll be a lot of human intervention in making sure that it is delivering the results that they're looking for. So, to move on, as we said, there's non-human traffic carrying out a range of different activities. So, what's the best way forward when you're dealing with non-human traffic? So in Intechnica, we definitely recommend a two-stage process. The first stage is very much about analysing the traffic, understanding the nature of that traffic, and trying to get a reasonable understanding of what the traffic is actually up to, what it's trying to achieve on your site, where it's coming from, all those sort of things. So you really understand what's going on. If you think of the worst thing when you're first starting to look at this is that there's a lot of non-human traffic out there, or there's a lot of traffic on your website that you don't really know what it's doing, why it's there, or even to what extent it's human and it's non-human. So the first stage of any investigation should really be to get a degree of understanding. Once you've got a degree of that understanding, you can start looking at what actions you can and should take around the non-human traffic. When you start looking at the actions you can take, you need to look at maximising the value, if any, you are getting from that non-human traffic. But simultaneously, you've got to consider that there will be an impact, either positive or negative, and it's about minimising the negative impact of all human traffic. It's really important to realise that you can be delivering value whilst also creating a negative impact, in which case you have to evaluate those two factors against each other. So, what's the nature of the impact that it can carry out on your site? There's a range of impacts, and I think it's important that you consider the full range that you can look at. So first and foremost, you'd probably look at what's the impact on other users. So does it negatively affect the experience of human users? That could be in terms of the quality of service they're getting. So, for example, non-availability of products that they're coming on to buy. But it could also be performance. So there could be an overall deterioration of site response due to higher traffic. And it's important to consider this because these are your users and your purchasers, not just of the product that they're going on to buy, but obviously there'll be repeat purchases, and if they have a bad experience for any reason, they will go to your competitors and they may not come back. But as well as the user, it's also important to consider the company interests. Is this non-human traffic acting against the interests of your company? So that could be content theft, that could be competitor price analysis, that could be, in this case, it could be buying tickets for resale, it could be, it could also be impacting analytics that you use to make your decisions as a company. It could be impacting your marketing spend and your marketing reach, which again obviously is negatively impacting what you want to do as a company. The next one is to sort of look at what's the impact on security. Is the non-human traffic trying to identify or exploit security weaknesses in your site? And then lastly, it's to look at the impact on your infrastructure. So is it affecting your infrastructure in terms of the performance? Are your servers reaching capacity? Is it affecting your scalability? Are you using a lot more disk space, a lot more database storage and things like that because of the amount of non-human traffic that you're not getting the expected value from? And is it affecting the bottom line just in terms of the cost of your infrastructure? That could be increased bandwidth costs if you pay direct for bandwidth costs. I mean, on some sites we've seen 25 to 40% of all bandwidth being used up by non-human traffic, which obviously are major cost implications. Okay, so just to move on from the impact that we're having, to look at some of the specific types of non-human traffic that you may see in the ticketing industry. There's obviously a wide range. We've just tried to pull out a few examples which we know have affected people in this industry. The first is content scrapers. So these are processes that gather event content to use on other sites, and this could be event listing sites or fan-based sites, things like that. We've flagged here that this is something that the OWASP community have flagged as one of their threat types for non-human traffic. But to look at what this actually means to the ticketing industry, this is definitely one of those sort of areas that comes in the grey area of the middle of good or bad, because the sites that are gathering this content are doing so to ultimately drive users to your site for ticket sales. They're not looking to take custom away from you, but they are driving content to your site. So there is value to be achieved from that. So what we have to do is then look at what the impact is. So other users are impacted obviously because the performance may be impacted while content is scraped. One of the big issues with content scraping is that it is often done in quite an aggressive manner, particularly if the site scraping it is not considerate of these sort of things. Some of the other content scraping sites will do things out of hours at a reasonable level, in which case there may not be an impact. Does this affect your business interests? I mean, I think it is your content. You're losing control over the way that is being presented to users. That may or may not be in line with the message that you want to portray. It may be putting content out there to an audience that is not your target audience. It's just something to consider. And I think the last one is on infrastructure. There's definitely an overhead in handling the amount of requests in that unstructured manner, which will impact obviously on the sorts of things we've just been talking about around infrastructure. So to move on to the type of non-human traffic, which is obviously the sort of major area of interest for the ticketing industry, which is around touts or scalpers on major events. And these are automated processes that look to purchase events for resale on other markets. Secondary ticketing sites are probably the main one, but it's also other outlet venues as well, that may be physical venues selling theatre tickets or other sites. Now, I think the most sort of commonly known these is processes that go on and physically buy a lot of tickets. There's a slightly more insidious version out there as well, which is spinners, which will go onto sites and just hold tickets whilst they are posted on secondary sites, and then not actually purchased until that ticket is resold on the secondary site, which is obviously means that from a scalper or touts point of view, they're not having to pay the money up front, so they don't take any of the risk. But it does mean that those tickets are held in an unpurchasable state for real fans, which means that they can appear on secondary sites before the tickets are genuinely sold out, and fans have to actually go on the secondary site to purchase them. So we look at the sort of threats that this comes in under the OWASP list. We've got scalping, obviously. There's account creation, so people create accounts for misuse for purchasing tickets. People try to bypass the capture process, and it's also automating a process so that it is carried out a lot faster than real, genuine customers can do. So, looking at that from an impact versus value point of view, the value of this is obviously that those tickets are sold, and selling them to touts and selling them to genuine people. The tickets are sold regardless. So there is value that is achieved from that. But from an impact point of view, there is, we look at the impact of this. Obviously, other users are very unhappy with this. They can't buy the product they wanted, and more than that, they then see the product that they wanted often on sale at much higher price, having sold to someone who clearly wasn't a genuine purchaser. So leads on to the business impact of that. You've got obviously the bad press that comes with that. You've got unhappy customers. You've got press stories about how these tickets are being unfairly sold. And that leads to unhappy artists and promoters, who are obviously the people who want to use your service, who may then look at alternative ways of selling their product in future. From an infrastructure point of view, you've got the additional overhead of handling this large amount of automated traffic, which will hit very suddenly with big spikes of traffic, and particularly when we're starting looking at things like spinners, where they were just repeatedly hitting your system to hold tickets in baskets or in a held state. And from a security point of view as well, there is account generation and harvesting going on, which is obviously not legitimate use of your service, and it's looking for security vulnerabilities to try and use other people's accounts. And then there's obviously the chance of credit card fraud with these kind of users. So to move on to another type of non-human traffic, which is sort of a subset or a variant on the previous one, which is really looking at people who scour ticketing sites looking for shows that are on promotional sale, and then they will automate the purchase of those for resale at full or higher price. So look at the value of that to the business. Obviously, you get the sale of that ticket at the value that you were trying to sell it at that time. Now, the impact of that is, obviously, for other users, that ticket is therefore not available at that promotional price. They will be sold out quicker, and they are the users who you were targeting with this particular promotion. which means from a business interest point of view, you're selling tickets to, you're not selling them to the customers that the promoters or yourself wanted to actually hit with those promotions. Those tickets will end up with people who are willing to pay full price, which obviously is what the promoters want. They would like those people to have paid full price for the tickets, and these tickets to go for people who were shopping in a slightly different market, who were shopping for promotional tickets. And again, from an infrastructure point of view, you're maintaining the amount of requests and a constant sort of surge of requests while people search your site for promotional tickets. Okay, so to move on, I'll just hand back over to Tom to talk about some of the solutions that we can have to this problem.
Thanks a lot, Andy. So yeah, I thought it was important, given we've got a lot of different people from a lot of different countries in various different positions, some technical, some not technical on this webinar, all in sort of different sort of stages as well. Some events venues, some primary ticketing sellers, and some secondary ticketing sellers. We want to just talk about, having looked at what's out there, having spoken to various people in the industry, what are the actual things you can do to start to tackle this on a non-technical level. So to be clear here, we here at Intechnica and most of the people we speak to see the solution to this touting problem as a multi-pronged attack. It's not just about having one piece of technology that's going to solve the problem for you, nor is it a single piece of legislation that's going to solve it. We see the best way to deal with touting is to look at various different things and a different sort of approach in terms of tackling them. And so we looked at the various different things out there and the recommendations from a lot of the different people we've spoken to, and here's what we broke it down to. I guess the first thing, and we've seen some reference to this already in some of the clients we spoke to, is the actual artists, the producers of the shows, the promoters actually making a very clear contract and clear agreement with the people who are selling those tickets that they would like those tickets to be sold at the ticket face value, and they do not want to see those tickets being sold on any of that brand's secondary ticketing platforms or any other sites at a different value. So I think that's the very first key thing is the people at the top of the chain saying, actually, we're taking a stand against this and we want to see our tickets sold to fans at face value. Sounds like a very obvious one, but something we've seen people doing and something that we think is a good thing to do. Another obvious one is name tickets. Just by putting the names on tickets, we've seen and spoken to people, this has really helped with in terms of reducing the amount of ticketing touting that's going on. We see a lot of people also limit tickets per transaction. You can limit transactions based per IP, per actual address or per name or per account. Really limiting how many people can actually, how many tickets people can actually buy once they get through to a sale, and can be certainly an obvious thing to do. Using a paperless system as well. We heard earlier how Iron Maiden, I feel like they've really improved, and reduced the amount of tickets out and going on their tour by moving to a paperless system. It was very clear and very prevalent, with the typical standard tickets that there were pieces of software available for touts to recreate those tickets and change the name. So certainly moving to a paperless system is a good option for people. I think backed up by all of those methods, the named on tickets, the limited tickets per sale, and the use of a paperless system, is educating and warning fans. I think at the end of the day, a lot of the fans are still the people buying tickets, whether they're buying them from yourself or the ticketing touts. So really making it very clear to the fans as an artist or a promoter that, resold tickets will not be tolerated. If you turn up at the venue without the ID that ticket was purchased with and it is named tickets, then you're not going to get in. Really trying to dissuade them from purchasing those tickets, because making it clear that they're just not going to get in, trying to prevent them from wanting to buy those from a ticket tout. Similarly, if and we're seeing venues where they've started to put this in place, turning people away, really, because they've not got the right form of ID, etc. It is going to, in the long run, damage the ticket tout's reputation if everyone starts to really work at this. Obviously, we mentioned as well the rise of all the various different platforms out there that are going to try and work with people to sell tickets ethically to both fans and communities, and make sure that that secondary ticket sales are fair. And there's lots of platforms people can partner with who do take a very fair approach almost their speciality and their niche in terms of how they sell the tickets and selling those tickets to fans. Also, obviously, doing the same and choosing an ethical ticket exchange for tickets. At the end of the day, there will be times when fans, real fans who bought the tickets fairly can't make the event. So making it an easy way for them to resell those tickets onto fans at fair prices is another really important part. It was very interesting to hear in the Waterson report as well that only sort of 20 to 40% of tickets are actually making it on sale to the fans in the sort of front line. I think obviously looking at how people manage allocations, who they provide those allocations to, and potentially penalising the allocations on people where they have seen them just hit secondary ticketing sites could be another sort of way of mitigating that that's been recommended. Obviously things like fan-only pre-sales are things that can help. All of these little things are just putting in little bits of difficulty to the touts. Of course some will still get through, but the more and more difficult the industry can make that journey for them, the more and more it's going to put certain people off. I think one of the strongest things I've certainly seen customers do is just double checking ticket sales once tickets have been purchased, looking at has anyone slipped through the net, and if they have, let's just kick them out and let's refund the tickets and say they're not coming. I've certainly seen people very easily be able to spot some touts there. And finally, I think once we're there, I think it'd be good to see people actually taking a proactive approach to reporting on touts. The government has already got template forms out there for people to fill in if they suspect touting activity, but really reporting touts, keeping an eye on secondary ticketing sites. If you are someone selling a ticket, have they appeared there? Looking at, obviously, if people have been daft enough to upload the tickets with the seat number, then just cancelling those tickets. So really trying to report touts and take action against themselves is a strong thing. As I said before, we really do see the approach has to be a multi-pronged approach, both on a legal and on a way you sell your tickets, at a venue on the door, and at a technical level. It's really going to start to sort of make this challenging for the ticket touts. Obviously, there's a lot of issues with all of the stuff I've mentioned. Mainly a lot of it is the inconvenience and the cost that will be added into the ticketing cycle. It isn't cheap for venues to check on the door all of the tickets and check IDs. Moving to paperless systems may well also prove very expensive, but I think it's about just finding, putting in as many of these mitigations as is possible for your business to really try and tackle the touts. So with that, I just want to pass back to Andy, who's going to talk about sort of at a technical level some of the very different things you can do to sort of try and mitigate against ticket touting.
Thanks, Tom. So yeah, just looking at just some of the challenges really around the identifying non-human traffic. I think the key thing about it is that it is a non-exact science. Non-human traffic and human traffic are exactly the same when you look at it on a request basis. There is no way to tell the difference. There are clues such as the information that comes in the request, which may identify it as a non-human traffic, but as we say, that can be faked very easily. So there isn't a sort of a very easy way to go about doing this. So what can you do? So let's go through, I think, some of the basic things that can be done. The first one is static blocking of known IP addresses and known user agents, which could be done on a firewall or a web application firewall. So this will have some impact. There will be some benefit in doing it. It's important that you do need to maintain it. It will need updating regularly, and it's really good if to have a very quick way of doing it, because as you spot a known IP address or a new IP address that you suspect of being non-human traffic, you need to be able to act on that quickly and have that change take effect pretty much instantly. It's also really important in this that you get access to shared data across the industry, because these IP addresses change so often that if you keep a list that's just known to you, you will miss out on a lot. But if you can share it across multiple sources, you'll gain a lot more knowledge from that. Another thing you can do is actually make application level changes. one of these which we've talked about already, which is you can set a limit per account of the amount of tickets that can be purchased. The downside to that is it will lead to fake account creation, or even worse, it can lead to people compromising and misusing genuine people's accounts. And then the other one we see fairly often is people who put captcha validations within either within each search or before purchase, or something that every user has to do to validate that they're not a robot, which obviously has some impact. The downside of that, again, is it slows down the buying process, which makes humans even slower than non-human traffic. If you get non-human traffic that can pass your captcha violation, it will get through that a lot quicker than a human will, and users do get annoyed by that process. And then the last thing you can do is around queuing and limiting the amount of users on the site, which has there's a lot of benefits to that as a product in terms of keeping the throughput on your site. But from a non-human traffic, it does tend to affect human traffic more than non-human traffic. And some of these systems can be bypassed by bot traffic as well. And I think it's worth pointing out that whilst you do get benefits, like we've been saying all along, there are benefits to blocking the non-human traffic or handling it in a different way. There will also be negative impacts on users. I've just pulled up a few tweets here of people complaining about various tactics that have been put in place to block non-human traffic, and it's obviously blocking genuine human traffic and making it unable to buy the tickets that they're after. This was a small selection just over the last few weeks, and there's a lot more examples out there if you were to go out and look. So just moving on to some of the more advanced methods that you can use to prevent non-human traffic, and this is where we start looking at more than just the individual requests, because as we've said before, non-human traffic and human traffic, the actual individual request will be almost identical. So what we need to do is look at the nature of the request, but more important, we need to look at the patterns of requests that people are making to see whether that is a pattern that would be what we would class as legitimate use. So obvious things like very, very quickly making multiple requests, or requesting multiple tickets at almost at the same time, or following some sort of very mechanized pattern, and following a pattern that would not seem typical to a genuine user. So, for example, clicking through every different event in sequence is not something that a general user would be likely to do. So, if you can start to do this more proactive traffic analysis, you can then start to identify non-human traffic with a lot more accuracy. And it's also worth looking at putting sort of honeypot traps in there. So these are things that automated traffic that is following a predefined script will not be aware of, because it's not following what it expects, but that humans using the site as expected via the user interface, they will be unaware that this trap has been put in place, and they will not flag that up. So that's just a way of making it so that any automated process that knows how to get around your systems, you can keep changing that so that it keeps them having to rework their methodology. Another thing that you can do is more proactive post-transaction fraud checks. So these will be things like that can be done via the payment gateway, but you can also start looking at doing more thorough address checks. You can look at the purchase history, to see whether that looks like something that would be typical of a genuine fan rather than a automated process. Okay, and hand back over to Tom now.
Yeah, fantastic. Thanks a lot for that, Andy. So obviously we're gonna cut to a Q&A at the end of this session. I thought just before we do that, it'd be good just to hear from Rodri, who I believe we've got on the line there. Let's hope this works.
Hello.
Hi, Rodri. Great to hear from you. As I said, everyone, Rodri is a client of ours and someone we've been working with for some time. Someone who, at Roundhouse, I'll let him talk about a little bit more. We're very passionate about fairness in the industry. So I think it'd be good just to get your take, Rodri, right now on in terms of where as a venue you stand on bots and what you think about that and how what kind of mitigations you're putting in place at the moment.
Sure. So just to give a bit of a background in where we're coming from, those that know us probably know us for what we call our night job, as you can see on the screen here, which is a performing arts venue. We put on loads of gigs, we put on circus, we put on opera. We host we have done for the last few years, the Apple Music Festival, and that's kind of how people know us. But what a lot of people don't know is actually our day job as such is as a charity, working with 3,000 young people a year in music and performing arts projects, and just trying to really give them skills, give them space to rehearse, and to inspire them and help them on their way and in their career. And so because of that, we're very keen on fair access to our shows. We're very keen on really putting the fans first and really giving a good customer experience. So that's kind of where we're coming from. So we're very keen that it's great that we sell out or whatever, but actually we really want the right people who want to come to be able to come at a fair price and to have the best experience. So obviously touts and bots is something we're very interested in and something we want to take a look at shutting down effectively, and so we've done a full range of things. I think, as the guy said, it's a multi-pronged approach really. So we've used some technology stuff, we've used some manual checks, we've used some gut instinct almost. So it all really depends on the artist and the promoter and how much they're willing to spend, how much they're willing to invest, because obviously there's a cost behind some of this, and it's just whether the appetite's there. So I think some of the stuff we've done, we scan all our tickets at the door, obviously. We do ticket limits. Obviously, we've done things with photo ID and names on tickets, so the lead booker has to bring photo ID to match the name on that ticket. They can't resell it, etc. And we will and have turned away people who have bought from a tout and don't have the ID that matches that. We often dedupe, so we get the list of tickets and we'll dedupe just by name or address, and actually that does bring out a surprising amount of people who've just gone back round again, tried to buy again to get past the limit. But one of the things that's come up actually is kind of trusting your staff. I think our box office staff often have a good gut feel. They see the same faces and the same names coming up again and again, and we've given the processes and put them in place so that they can flag these people, and we get an alert as soon as that person buys a ticket or that IP is used to buy a ticket, and we could look into it, see whether there's some strange patterns here, and look to block them from buying or look to contact them and explore what they're doing. So yeah, we've done quite a range of stuff. I think from the bots point of view, I think it's extremely difficult to know, obviously, how effective we are really. One particular case is we had Radiohead play last year, and in the night before we went on sale, there was somewhere in the region of 100, I think, failed transactions that went through our credit card system online. And I think our only interpretation there was somebody was configuring a bot essentially ready for the on sale that following morning, and they were just running it through. Putting in some fake credit card details or something just to check it failed, right, running it again, just trying to understand our online pathway so that when the on sale came round, they could just hit go on however many bots this might have been, in the hope that they would get tickets. And so we're starting to dig into now, looking at IPs that are used, looking at user agents that are used, as well on the technical side, just to try and understand, where this traffic's coming from and what it's for.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Rodri. I mean, that's really useful. I think we'll come back to you in just a minute when we go to the Q&A. I think there's already some interesting questions that are building up for you. But I mean, thanks a lot for your insight. It's great to hear that you are one of the venues that are doing something about this, and it's pretty clear that I think it's even more frustrating when we're seeing ticket touts profiteering on charities, which is also becoming more and more common, unfortunately. I think in summary, just to pass over to you, Andy.
Thanks, Tom. So I think just to summarise what we've talked about today, before we go over to Q&A. So if anyone's got any more questions, feel free to fire them over now, and we'll be picking those up in the next few minutes. So I think it's clear that non-human traffic is a problem in the ticketing industry. It creates a lot of negative public opinions, and it's increasingly becoming a legal issue. It's as yet unknown what the impact that will have on ticket sellers, and what responsibility will be put back on the sellers to stop non-human traffic or touting being done through their system. And there's no simple solution to the problem, because, as we've said, not all bots are good or bad. There'll be somewhere in the middle, and you need to understand the nature and the extent of the problem before you take action in mitigating it. And the mitigation will not be simple either. I think there's various ways that you could handle traffic that you don't necessarily want to serve. There's some, in terms of the solution to the problem, there are some fairly basic solutions that can be implemented, but you need to be aware of the negative impact that they maybe have, and that they will only have limited effect on capturing some of this traffic. So you do need more proactive solutions. You need to evolve your solutions. You need to stay on top of the problem, and you need to learn what is normal and not normal traffic, and do that to proactively identify the non-human traffic that you don't want to handle on your system. Okay, just hand back over to Tom now. Thank you.
Yeah. So I think just as a very sort of quick bit, before we go into Q&A, absolutely, one of the things we're working with a lot of ticketing vendors, and also people in other industries trying to combat this problem. If anyone does want to start to get a view into what's actually going on the site, and can there be more to be done, we do offer a free traffic audit, which is where we can engage with people and just give you a bit of visibility into what the non-human traffic looks like on your site, and what that breakdown is. So if anyone is interested, do get in touch with us after this. We'll be more than happy to sort of help you through that, and potentially give you visibility into what's going on your website. We've had a couple of questions come through. We're very tight on time, so I just kind of wanted to cover a few of them off. But I guess the first one was just coming in from and a fairly obvious one. How can people get a view of if they do have a problem? Roger, you mentioned something really quickly there, but I think it'd be interesting, Andy and Roger, what your opinion are. What things would you expect to see if someone was experiencing a bot problem?
Sorry,
go on. Sorry.
Do you want to answer?
The only thing we've seen from example of recently is we'll often release 1 or 2 tickets weeks after the on sale, just as guest lists are freed up or seats are freed up and things. And it's interesting to note how quickly those tickets will disappear. Basically, it's not just someone casually popping on and refreshing. They might go in in less than a minute, for example. There's clearly something sat there on that page waiting for that moment.
Yeah, I think it's one of these things where it's actually quite a difficult thing to know, because, as you say, it mixes in with your normal traffic, and to some extent it's sort of hidden traffic. But some of the things you will notice, like Roger was just saying, if tickets are going very quickly after prices are changing, or they're going back on sale, if we're noticing around this kind of spinners that we were talking about, if tickets are being held in baskets for a lot longer than you would expect, obviously you've got the fairly obvious thing that if your tickets are selling out in less than the amount of time that it's legitimate for a user to go through the process. So, obviously the process will vary from site to site, but a typical user journey through a buying process is around about 10 minutes. If people are doing that in under a minute, then that's probably not legitimate. So it's all about noticing patterns within your traffic and evaluating that against what you would expect to be typical. But it's something that's actually very difficult to do without having access to analytics that are looking at this in particular. Normal analytics are not based on looking for this sort of behaviour.
Yeah. Okay, great. And I think onto the next thought, we've had someone actually come in and just one thing, we are very open about, what we do and trying to work with the industry. There's a really interesting comment come in on ballots. I know Rodri, ballots are something you've been looking at. What's your kind of opinion on those?
I think they're great, actually. So we've done a couple of ballots where people just sign up. They get effectively in our system they buy a free ticket, and then we email out a unique code, and that grants them access to an on sale at a given time. And that, in theory, will restrict it down because they have to go to the trouble of having either a series of fake email, a series of email accounts really, or generating a load of new accounts. And actually, it seems to be limiting the touting potential there, certainly. The only difficulty there is promoters like to see a big, quick, sharp sellout for a lot of shows. And the ballot thing can sometimes restrict that. So it's working with the promoter to understand really what they want to do and what message they want to put out.
Fantastic. Thanks for that feedback, and thanks as well, Ben, for raising that in the Q&A. I think that's really useful. We've pretty much come to the end, unfortunately. So I'm aware of everyone's time here. I think there's a couple more questions that we'll take offline, and we'll just feed back on them via email. As I said, if anyone does have any questions for us in terms of what the theme today, do get in touch. If you do want to understand a little bit more into the nature of your traffic, we'd be more than happy to help you out with that. I'd just like to thank everyone for joining and say specifically thank you to Andy and Rodri for joining us on the webinar. I really appreciate your input today, and thanks everyone for joining us. We hope to be in touch with you all soon. Thanks a lot.